Today we dive into the belly of a whale. We're talking about Baten Kaitos. Welcome to episode 8 of Dude, Where's My Cards podcast, where we primarily evaluate strategy card games from both a designer's and a regular gamer's perspective. As always, my name is Brendan, and I'm joined with my constant co-host Jordan. In today's episode, we'll be talking about Baten Kaitos, a Gamecube game from Bandai Namco.
Yeah, so just a little overview. We're looking at Baten Kaitos, Eternal Wings in the Lost Ocean, which is the original one released on the Gamecube in 2004 for North America. In it, a player assumes the role of a guardian spirit. It is an unseen player avatar who guides the protagonist Kaitos and his party of companions in an adventure across the aerial floating island-based kingdom in the clouds. The game is focused around a concept of Magnus, which is magical cards that capture the essence of items found throughout the world. It's used as a plot device for in-game item management and is the basis for the card-themed battle system, which is the reason we are reviewing it today. It has a unique battle system which includes aspects of turn-based and action-based battle systems, collectible card games, and even has a little bit of poker involved in it.
Mm-hmm.
Quick overview of what the game is. So, that was general thoughts to it. B is going to be looking at it from the designer perspective, and
Yes.
I will be looking at it as the new game perspective, because I had just played it recently, and it's a childhood favorite for Brendan. So.
Yeah, so, it's difficult to assess things from a designer's and regular gamer's perspective when we're talking about a non-analog game. Like, this is a GameCube game, came out in 2004, like you said. And, even then, we're looking back at dated concepts, dated graphics, dated ideologies.
But also, it's not really been done since then.
No, it hasn't. And if you now, after playing it, look back at a couple of the game designs that I have proposed for us or have incorporated,
definitely.
You now see where a lot of my influence come from, because a lot of games I come up with, I try to drive some of the cool concepts from this game into it to see if it works. Usually we move away from it in the end as we shift towards things that make more sense, but my initial concept's always like, will it work in this game? Can I make it happen?
Keep trying. Eventually, I definitely see while playing this game, saw a lot of the concept designs for original games that you'd started, trying to turn this into an analog. And the thing is, this game does feel like an analog game a lot in the aspects of the combat and deck building. Mm-hmm. It does still, even though it's digital, and even though it's an RPG mainly, it does feel still like a battle-themed card game.
The problem that I always come across in trying to turn this into analog is that the game does so many things well that only video games can do and calculate.
Yeah.
Like the whole card attack bonus system with analog numbers and poker-style bonuses.
Yeah.
You can't replicate that kind of data crunching.
Yeah.
Because their numbers are all over the place. You never got to the end game. At the end game, you can be doing tens of thousands of damage in a single attack. And what's 38% bonus to 4,642? And you go, yeah, good luck doing that on an analog game.
Not stopping an analog game to go and do that math. So, kind of looking at it, first time gamer. I picked up this game. I got it through the emulator. Picked it up. Started playing disc 1 there. The game, even though it's 2004, it looks really good.
Yeah.
So visually, it was definitely
at the time
appealing.
It was actually really, really good.
Yeah. Well, if it holds
playing
up still
playing it now on the emulator, it does make me a little bit sad. But that is also probably an emulator not pushing it to the
full capacity,
premium capacity of the graphics card of a GameCube.
Yeah, and but really, for me, we've played some other things through emulators, and I've looked at older games in the PlayStation 1 when we did the Digimon. So this was a severe step up in being a classic gamer. I totally can say that this game was a magnificent piece for its time. It was way ahead of the bar because it still holds up well now.
And the funny thing about this game is that for the longest time I pushed off not getting it because I thought, wow, this sounds like such a dumb game. Who wants to play an RPG that is driven entirely by cards? At that time, in 2004, to me, it was RPG, JRPG, that was life. Mm-hmm. Card games were a fun kind of thing I did on the side as a hobby, but it wasn't big in my life yet. I was 12 years old at the time.
Yeah.
So I looked at this, I thought it was dumb. And that was the time when I subscribed to Nintendo Power magazines, if you remember what those were way back in the day. And for like 6 or 7 months just bombarded with imagery of this game in these magazines of people claiming how good it is. And then it was the December issue where they come out and they give their Game of the Year awards and everything. And Baten Kaitos won like every Nintendo Power magazine category that they do for their games. And I was like, do you know what? I'm just gonna go buy it. Like, it can't be that bad if it's getting all these awards. Like,
Yeah.
okay, we're just gonna dive in. I also thought the name Baten Kaitos was kind of dumb. And I was like, I just as a 12-year-old, it made no sense to me.
Yeah, it does feel very foreign in the naming. It's still.
And I guess we also need to explain the opener a little bit, because I said we're jumping into the belly of a whale.
Oh yes.
And technically, Baten Kaitos is the star in the Cetus constellation that lies in the belly
Of the whale.
And Cetus constellation is a whale. So
Yeah.
because the star lies in the belly of the whale, its game's called Baten Kaitos. Like,
Which, like,
semi-spoilers, but not really spoilers.
It gives some spoilers to the game, so it's actually a really clever name. And then, for me, I was like, okay, Kalos. So I was like, maybe that's how this ties while I was playing the game. It doesn't, but
No.
that's how I justified it to myself. The only real bad side, and I know you'll agree with this because you're an anime fan, is the voiceover acting in this game
It's comical.
is atrocious, but whatever. It's an
And
older game. That's all I chalked it
even
up
back
for.
then in 2004 or 2005 when they started giving out awards for this game, that was still everyone's gripe. It was kind of just like yes, it adds a little bit of flavor to the game to have pretty much every important voice scene actually have a voice to it.
Yeah.
But some of the voice actors really hurts. Like, one of my favorite characters and their voice acting, you're not going to meet until you get close to disc 2. You're not quite there yet. Did you look at all the characters? Did you get a chance to?
Yeah, I looked
So
at them.
Mizudi, the
The
masked
masked
mage,
character, yeah.
has a really cool voice and has a very unique character. I also think Gabari's not bad, but you haven't really met Gabari
No.
either. But
But
the first two characters are kind of just like, cringe at times.
like the gasps, the
Yeah.
sudden surprise are pretty
Oh
comical.
no!
But that's going nitpicking into the actual design of the game. But really, so if I kind of ignore so like you said, the JRPG, it was the attempt to get some JRPGs into the Gamecube because there wasn't a lot of successful ones out
It
there.
actually was one of the first JRPGs that launched onto the GameCube.
Yeah.
I think the other big one at the time was Tales of Symphonia, which came out just before it, maybe a year or two before it.
Yeah.
But until then, they didn't really have any titles that they could call their own, and to most people, this was still a foreign title to bring in. Like,
Yeah.
when you think of JRPG back then, you're looking at someone bringing in Final Fantasy, you're looking at maybe a remake of a Chrono Trigger, like you're looking at the classics that people would identify with.
Yeah.
And this game still is, it's a cult classic, but it's not well known.
Yeah,
Like,
it
people
is.
who have played this game on the GameCube swear by it. People who haven't,
Yeah.
they looked at it at a distance and were just like, huh.
I see
I
a lot
don't
in
know.
a lot of people who do enjoy this game, and a lot of reviewers that I've seen review the game, watching other people's opinions on it too. I noticed that a lot of them will say like, oh, they have nitpicks with this, or they dislike this part of the game, or the card system was kind of annoying. But then they always end their sentence with, "But this was still one of my favorite games of all time, and I will continue to play it."
Yeah.
So it's an interesting thing. So looking at it, as a whole, that's great. But let's jump into the combat, which is really where the card-based system.
Yeah,
comes
and we can
for
talk
us.
a bit more about the design and the gamers aspect in regards to combat.
Yeah.
For those of you who are watching on YouTube, we can actually throw on a little video clip here of what the game looks like in its current state. Right now they're just running through a town, just giving a sense of graphics of what the game looked like back in 2004. So we'll make it a little bigger on the screen here. You can see what's going on. So now they're going to be traveling from the main map into one
This
of
is their open world map.
This is one of their open worlds.
Which is on rails, but it's still... It's
Yeah.
actually... It's nice because there's not a lot of random running
Yeah,
around.
you get from point A to point B without the annoying Pokemon-esque random battles that take forever. So in this instance, they're entering the jungle of one of the islands that you play on. There are multiple islands that kind of you go throughout the game, and as you clear each island, you get to go to the next objective, and the story continues to unfold. And
So it's a pretty on-rails system, which is, nice for me. I prefer the straightforward.
because here's an example of the battle scene. So in battles, you have 3 characters. Every card that you get in your starting hand and throughout the rest of your deck as you continue to draw has a number in the top left corner. As you progress through the games, the numbers in the corners can go from 1 in a corner up to 4 in one in each corner of the card. these numbers vary from 1 to 9. Well, the numbers themselves do not impact what the card actually does. So if you have a fire spell, you have a water spell, you have a sword that deals dark damage, that's always going to deal a sword. There's always going to deal dark damage. The fire spell is always going to deal the fire damage. The water spell is always going to deal the water damage. But the numbers add a depth of combat to the game where it allows you also on defense, because when you're defending, you also have to defend against the damage to some degree. Mm-hmm. But the numbers give the player a chance to really flex their quick decision making and their pattern awareness, because if you're able to play essentially Texas Hold'em with these cards, you're going to gain bonus damage on stuff. So if you were to get a combination of 4 5s and then you played 2 2s, you'd gain a percent bonus for getting 4 of a kind and 2 of a kind.
Yeah, or even the sequence 1 2 3. 4,
yes, the
5,
sequences are always the best. They're the hardest to get, so the bonus application for them are just huge.
Yeah.
When you get to late game, if you manage to hit a 1 to 9 or 9 to 1 straight combo like that, you get like a 200% damage boost, which is absolutely monstrous.
So from a gamer perspective, if you want to pause there a little bit, but they talk each combat. You have a moment where you start your sequence and you start playing your cards. Your attack goes off, and then what it actually goes into is a result screen.
Yes.
So it pauses the battle and it shows you the damage done, the percentage that was blocked, if it was effective or not, or whatever. It shows you a breakdown, and that is actually you can take your time to kind of collect your thoughts at that screen.
Yeah.
Because for the rest of the battle, it's very much on a time base. You need to get. This is where getting a sequence is actually difficult near the end of the game. In the beginning of the game, the start of your turn, there's no time.
There's no time, and they also don't give you many cards to manage because they want you to get into the flow of things.
But as you get further into the game, you have a 3-second decision between card to card to card, so you have to be.
It's not even
fast.
Between card to card to card. It's just playing your first card, and then you have the attack animation decision time before you can.
Next, yeah.
So there's a lot of times where you're panicking and you're looking for that one card and you're trying to get it off before your attack animation finishes, because the moment that happens, if you fail to play another card, your attack sequence ends.
And then, on top of everything, you can only attack one target or heal one target per phase. So you select one of the enemies available or one of your allies, including yourself, to heal.
And that is a concept I both love and hate, because when you're playing the game, it just allows a lot more tactical decision-making on who you have to prioritize and who you have to burst, or what hero or what playable character you have decided to set up their deck as maybe more of a heal deck, or maybe they've got really good combos with light magic, so you want to make sure they're targeting someone who's weak to light magic. It's another thing we didn't talk about, that there is a element weakness based system within the game.
Yeah.
But it works as a counteraction rather than a weakness and resistance. So some characters will be weak to light damage, so you want to deal light damage. But if they block and their block blocks light damage, the light damage still goes through. Mm-hmm. They need to block with dark damage to offset the light damage that is coming through.
Yeah.
It's the same way if your character takes damage from water attacks, you want to have fire armor to block the damage from water to offset that damage.
Yeah.
So that takes a little bit of a while to grasp at the beginning, because you think in logical sense that, if they attack me with a water-based weapon, I'm going to defend with a water-based armor because water blocks water. But in this case, it's an offset system.
Yeah. But visually, it's fun. The combat's pretty straightforward. They do a fantastic job. We'll talk about it a little bit more, but of actually breaking down those systems that Brendan's talking about, they have a lot of good intros to the very beginning of the game.
Yeah.
Which was nice for me as a new player who's experienced some terrible starts of older games.
I'm glad you thought that there was some kind of introduction to this game, because this was definitely another game back in the era of rule books where you're supposed to read them before you play.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of information in there that you wouldn't have known unless you read the rule book. But the fact that you can get into the game and just the beginning of the game's easy enough that you can just play cards.
Well, if you take
and
the
then
time
you kind of look at the
NPCs,
result screen,
Yeah, they have a lot of NPCs that you actually talk to that go, "Oh, I'm so strong for this area. Do you want to know why I'm strong?"
Have that, yes.
And then it goes, "Do you want to ask him questions?" So then it tells you "Oh, what about combos? It has
You're
NPCs
right,
scattered through
They didn't have a
areas.
true introduction. They just kind of had a play the game, and if you want to ask questions, here's NPCs along the way to help you advance your gameplay, which is actually a nice tactful way to do it.
That's what I enjoyed, because it doesn't throw it all down your throat at the beginning.
It doesn't give you a 30-minute introduction of here's everything you need to remember for the next 60 hours of gameplay.
And as somebody like you who's probably played this game numerous times,
every time.
You can just you don't even need to talk to these people. So it's not a mandatory trial, which is good, but it's aware enough, because especially at the beginning of the game, you're trying to, there's only like, for the first 30 minutes, there's only like 10 NPCs. So you're usually talking to each one of them because it's very minimal. As you get further, there's more and you might skip them, but yeah, I enjoyed that. So from a gamer perspective, there's definitely some big pros to it. On design side, obviously, but you've taken a lot from this game and future design ideas.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating concept. The idea is, we talk about it being a card game, but realistically, this is a deck builder disguised into an RPG adventure. Like, through and through, the most important concepts of this game is you have cards, you get new cards, you build your deck, you use your deck to do battle. Yep. Sometimes when you defeat creatures, you get new cards. If you decide they're worth it to put in your deck, you put them into your deck. Throughout the game, you have an inventory of cards that you have that you've collected, so if you want to, you can take those cards, add them into your deck, switch out your element alignment. Like, there's lots of deck building elements to the game because it is a deck builder turn-based combat. And that's primarily why we're evaluating this, because it's such a strong deck builder. It's not just a card-based game. Like, you actually have to think about how you build your deck, what numbers and sequences you want to try and put into your deck to optimize your chances of getting these poker-based combos.
CCG fans, TCG fans, living card game fans, this is like all those concepts, but you're playing that game with a storyline in a single-player aspect, which is part of the reason why it appealed to me as well, because it's all that concepts of the regular tabletop games that I enjoy with a story.
And then you also throw in the fact that later in the game, when the split decision making, you have to be as quick, you actually can be good at this game. It's not like a JRPG where you grind, you get your levels. Oh, I'm just so strong, I don't have to be good at this game. I can just play it, finish it, and move on with the story. Like, the first time I played this game, 12-year-old Brendan, I don't think I beat it for 2 years. Because there were times that it got so hard, and I just wasn't good enough to beat the game.
And if you weren't optimizing your deck building, and if you had terrible RNG, there's
back then,
an option.
Obviously, there are so many concepts that were foreign to me that I hadn't fully developed and understood at that time. But it honestly took me so long, and I would put it down for months at a time and get frustrated. And then I'd come back months later, and the thing that frustrates me, I'd beat it on the first turn.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of understanding luck. I don't know what I even want to call it.
It's a deck builder. There's the luck, which is also interesting to see.
But the fact that I've never played a JRPG or any kind of RPG where I've gotten so frustrated at not being good enough at the game that I had to drop it and come back to it.
Yeah.
And to me, I love that the game is challenging.
It's not just, I'll go grind for 2
You
more
can't
hours
go
to beat
defeat
that
the
boss.
final bosses of the game by getting the best cards in the game.
Yeah.
You have to be able to play them in a fairly effective bonus sequence to deal the damage required, because endgame bosses will deal more damage than you're able to block consistently and more damage that you're able to heal consistently. And that, to me, just adds a ton of value to the gameplay, and especially the replayability aspect of the game, because it's not like I'm going on a mindless grind to get to the end of the game, beat the boss. Oh, did you enjoy the process? Yeah, kind of. Like, even playing through the game, a lot of games like this, I would try to avoid a lot of random battles, just because eventually it feels like it's a grind, and it's like, oh, was it really worth the 15 experience or whatever you gain for killing this thing? Oh, it's kind of in the way. The loot it gives isn't great.
Yeah.
But to me, because the gameplay evolves at a fast enough pace that you go from having infinite time to 30 seconds to having 10 seconds, and you start getting more cards, you're constantly trying to think of ways to identify patterns quicker, way to optimize your decks quicker, and you're always receiving that gratification, that dopamine boost in your head when you manage to hit those combos.
Yeah.
So even if I've played for 10 hours or 40 hours, every time I get that max combo, it's an instant gratification to me. And that feels good enough that almost like I'm leveling constantly, so I want to keep pushing.
Yeah. That's a pretty good breakdown for the both. There's little picks, but I'll save those for when we get to them inside of our actual rubrics.
Yeah.
Just to space them a bit. But we'll jump into it. So impression categories is where we have our theme, rules, design and art, and complexity. Each one of these are out of 5.
Yep.
So B for your starting off on theme.
Well, this is a 5. Like, this is one of my all-time favorite themes across any game I've ever played. At first, it seems a little simple. You got worlds like you do in other RPGs, but these worlds are separated in a floating sky without an ocean. Like, the worlds are very distinct from one another. You got World 1, World 2, World 3, World 4, World 5, so on. and it's not open world. It's all disconnected. And you think, okay, this is kind of basic. But for me, the reason why the theme gets a 5 is because the further you get into the game, the story actually gets pretty nutty. And the simplicity or the linearity of the game goes completely off track, which is kind of cool. Like, you think you're just going from pattern A to pattern B to pattern C, and you think that you're getting towards the end of the game, and then right when you think you're at the end of the game, it goes, hey, just kidding, the entire world just got flipped on its head. What now, bro?
Yeah, for me, I put it at a 4. I haven't gone too deep into it, but from my initial aspects, it's fantasy based with, you know, a little bit of sci-fi element to it through some of the wings and the mechas and stuff that I kind of it's jives well for me. So
yeah,
it was right fit 4, perfect enough.
Okay, good.
Rules kind of looks at the
kind of hard to judge a rules for a game that.
See, but this is where you'll be surprised. I gave it a 5 because of my experience with older games, and rules have been awful for the most part of not being understand what's going on. And this game, I felt like, gave the right amount of explanation to things if you looked for it when you needed it, and you know, like, it's not all at once. It gives you some time to learn it, and then you can learn little extra nuanced combos even if you didn't learn it on your own. Like, for a while, it took me first, I don't know, hour, it took me a while to realize that I was actually healing the enemies when I was accidentally healing.
Oh, okay, yeah, that would definitely slow down the process.
But in turn, I realized how to do things, and it learned and taught me well enough that I was like, okay. And it wasn't like I didn't get punished because I was healing them. Like, I still was beating them. I was just like
doing it a little bit slower.
I didn't understand why it was maybe a little slower than it should have been, but that was interesting. And it was like, not, even though I was failing and doing something wrong, I wasn't feeling like I was getting punished for it. So I really like that from the rules aspect of the game, that they're taught well enough and freely enough at the beginning of the game, and then they get progressively harder.
Yeah.
I love that with rules. To start off, and I felt it fit perfectly for everything.
And to me, I also have it as a 5, just based on the fact that they start you out in such a way in the game that, as you said, you can't really fail. They give you an opportunity to get comfortable with what's going on. The enemies that you face never really pose much of a threat.
It feels like it at times, but it doesn't. They don't. Like,
they don't.
They
have some great animations. They make the bosses seem epic to make it seem like you're under some kind of pressure. The music in the game will get you fired up at times when you face the epic bosses. But it's such a simple concept that they let you play it as a simple concept early, and then they let you grow with it as the concept develops and grows with you.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's pretty much the same way. Like you said, it never felt like I was not in danger, but I was still beating, like, the first boss. I healed probably 6 times before I realized in that boss fight that I wasn't healing myself.
Yeah, you were healing the boss.
I was healing the boss, and I'm like, oh. But even with that happening, I was still able to come back.
So I have to ask you, did you ever get any spirit attacks?
Yeah, the blue.
So that's when you start, like, playing your combo, and then a card will suddenly change into a different card.
Oh, no. I only got like the blue sword, which was like a special.
That's one of the finales, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Because there's times in the game where I still don't know what causes them, why they happen. I'm pretty sure they're just completely random sequences that the game fires off.
I read one about a healing one where if you do like a hamburger, beef, charcoal, and something else, it turns into a hamburger.
So those are combos within the game because the game acts almost as the cards are living.
Yeah.
So you can get a fire sword, but it may only last 2 hours of gameplay before it turns into a short sword again, and then it's terrible.
Yeah.
And the same thing goes in the game. You can combine a notebook with a magic pen in a combo sequence, and then suddenly you'll get a guide for creature collection or something like that. And you can do cool combos like that. I don't explore it that much because that doesn't really add much to the combat value of deck builders, and I'm not much of a completionist or collectionist.
Yeah.
So I'm not too concerned about that. I'm sure one day I'll go through and do all the side quest stuff from beginning to end, but that's a large investment.
Well, that's another thing to add too. There's when I read there was 1,000 different cards.
Yeah.
So that's including evolutions. Like they said, for example, milk will eventually turn into cheese and curl into cheese, which it takes, I think it was like 2 in-game days or 2 days worth of gameplay. There's one, I think the hardest card to get in the game, there was a streamer on Twitch who did it. He was doing a speed run of the game to 100% complete it.
Yep.
And it's called the perfect hair. You have to leave shampoo in your inventory with the game running for 366 hours to get it.
Oh boy.
So he left his game running on like triple speed on Twitch, and he actually got banned from Twitch because Twitch just said it was idle video. But like there's these weird like 366 in-game hours is insane to have to run. Insane. But it's a cool like little Easter egg to completely get 100%.
It gives you something else in the game to do besides just completing the game.
Kind of. So then we're looking at that a bit more, design and artwork for impression category. So for myself as the gamer, my initial aspects of looking at it, and this could be because it's outdated, but it's not just because it's outdated. The actual cards, which is where I'm basing this off of, left me wanting more when looking at them. Mm-hmm. They're simple and they get the job done, but that's really was it. I wanted more from it, and that was just being a card gamer. I wanted something more flashy. Yeah. So for me, they just felt very simple, and they get the job done, and they're very easy. And I could get it when you get later in the game. You probably prefer it simple and easy, just numbers. Blah, blah, blah.
I didn't even see the cards at that point. You see maybe the color, like if it's a dark card, you'll see it's black, but you're looking at the numbers on the card all the time.
But really, for me, when I'm looking at it, just the design of the cards won, and I wanted more from it. It was just a simple beige piece of cardboard with a image on it and a number, and the images are just very simple. Mm-hmm. For how beautiful the game was, the cards just felt very lackluster. Yeah. Even though they're such an important part of the game, I just felt like it missed that for me. So I gave it a 3 only because I felt like I wanted more from the cards themselves.
And for me, when I judge this, I have to go back to this is the 2004 game, and I have to try and do my best to judge it on that point. And at that point, it was one of the most incredible games visually that I had played.
Magic the Gathering had been out for like 11 years at that point. Yeah. So they had there's lots of other card games that they could have used inspiration for the cards. I get that it was the first
for what
digital
you need
version
of those cards, though. Like, you can say yes, you want more, but what more could you do?
Just the imagery on the card itself, but then maybe that would take away from the actual number, which would make it a game
You need
harder.
to be able to evaluate the cards in a split second. You don't get a chance in that game to appreciate the card art. Yeah. Like, if you want to look at cards that look nice, take photos of monsters in the game and collect their photography cards and then take a look at them. Like, the cards look good then. It's just, like, I give it a 5. Like, I had to give it a 5 based on the fact that, yes, the art of the cards may not be wow, but the design of how they work within the game is great. And then, because it is a video game, I do have to go into the entire aspect of what the game looks like. And to me, at that point, that was a 5, so I have to continue giving it 5.
The gameplay is fantastic, or the game visuals of the game, especially for its time, are great. Just as purely as like a new gamer to myself, the cards were lackluster, and I wanted more. And I tried to base it only on the cards because that's really what the theme that we're looking for is, that battles aspect. Yep. The animations of the characters and like the combos are great, which is why again it's not like low. Yeah. But the cards are very bland themselves. Yes. The animations are fantastic.
That also comes from us being older, a little bit more spoiled with the cards that we've gotten in our life. Yeah. Like if you were 10, 12 years old when you looked at this game, would you have been comparing it to Magic? Would you have been thinking, whoa, this card could look like Magic cards? And
not even that. I just use Magic. Yeah, but I'm like thinking just like
you're used to so much TCG
I'm used to flashy
art.
Style cards, and this is so basic for such a visually beautiful game. It felt like it was
but that's the sacrifice they did. They went with functional cards that they could give you the battle animations to make the game seem flashy.
Because it is a video game, they're focusing on the animation.
Some of the later game finales that you can get, they're so stupidly flashy that it makes you feel so hyped when they go off.
But lower, and it's only lower just because my initial feels when I look at the game.
And 3's not bad either. It's it's good.
It's average.
It's not great. It's not terrible.
And I'm only trying to, like I said, trying to look at it from my visual. I felt like I wanted more from it. That's it. Complexity of the game, it's a 4. Probably closer to a 5. I just didn't feel like I could 100% give it a 5.
Not yet. You'll get there.
But like it's not that it's more complex or less complex. It just felt like it was good. It felt good. Everything felt great, actually, for most of the part. But it just wasn't the wow factor yet. And maybe that's again just back to the fact that I haven't finished the entire game and gotten more to the end game where maybe it feels more wow. But it was good. The complexity felt pretty well. Deck building, I could see there was quite a bit of thought that had to go into it to get successful combos going, and you want to think of your sequence, not just do damage. So, I don't know, 4 for me. I couldn't quite feel like it was a 5, but it's pretty close.
Well, I gave it a 5.
Big surprise.
Yeah, big surprise. And the biggest reason for that is because the complexity develops with your understanding and ability to play the game. It's not like at any point the complexity jumps on you so high that you fall behind.
Yeah.
It progresses with you throughout the game, so at every point in the game you feel challenged. Once you start feeling comfortable, you're challenged again to be better. And that sets you up perfectly for when you get to the end of the game. If you're able to recognize your patterns quick enough, build your deck right, then it's rewarding.
Yeah. Game categories, we're going to jump into gameplay in depth. Gameplay out of 10 is it's an important stat for us, and depth out of 5. Gameplay for me is going to sit at an 8.
That's fair.
It's a great game. I'm enjoying it. There's some nuances that are a little bit annoying. It's a little bit outdated, but even then it's still very, very playable. The defense is kind of frustrating at times because the initial attack is really hard to get your defensive card out.
Yep.
So that's the one frustrating feature I've had. After the first attack, I usually can time the rest, but that first
so you got to
attack
think
is
of
really
it
difficult.
though as that's a meant to be aspect of
Maybe.
combat, because if you had too much time and you blocked everything super easy, like some characters do strike faster than others, and I think there's supposed to be that quick strike. Like you're supposed to not be able to defend unless you know what's coming, you know that creature type, and you have purposely set up your last cards and your selector on the card waiting to go, so the moment it's your turn, you press the button, boom, you got a defense.
And that might just come with like further game, because I did notice that a lot of times I would be like, okay, I'm going to attack with this, and then I had to make sure that my defense item was the next available card, and I'm like tapping X on my keyboard, which is the select button, to try to right away counter, because I have a full deck of defense there. It was just a minor frustration for me. But overall, the game was pretty good. So the gameplay for me so far, for the past 4 or 5 hours of gameplay that I've gotten through, and we've beaten the game a number of times, and I've looked at a little bit of the more fancy combos and stuff. It looks like it's going to be good. So it's an 8 for me. Yep.
And as predicted, I have this as a 10. This is one of my favorite gameplay systems of all times across analog and video games. The biggest part for me, which is kind of funny, is I love the story of this game. The beginning seems a little bit straightforward, like they don't fully reveal their hand of what this game is going to become until you get to the point where suddenly, here's our entire hand, world's completely changed, now what do you do?
Yeah, there's a little bit of stuff that slowly gets explained and seems confusing, and even in the hours that I've played, things have become a little bit more clearer, even from like the initial introduction of the game. Like the first scene of the game is very confusing, but do a pretty good job at starting to unbox it a little bit.
Yeah, but like the thing is, like eventually that gets really unboxed. And that's the one thing about this game that is really interesting, is the main character, you don't really know him.
Yeah.
Like even at this point, we both decided to start a playthrough of this game just for this review, and I've gotten 10 or 12 hours in, and you've gotten 3 hours or so
5
in?
or 6.
5 or 6? Okay, so you've done quite a bit. But even at that point, you still don't really know this character, besides the fact that he doesn't really give a damn. He's all about himself, and
you're not even technically the protagonist in the story. You're the guardian spirit following him, which is also interesting, because the interaction between you and him it's interesting of how you respond to some of his things. He'll kind of like, I think I half-assed responded to him once, and he went, whoa. You can't be doing these kind of responses. We're supposed to be building trust here.
At that point, no matter what you chose, he gives that response.
Okay.
Yeah.
I still enjoyed the fact that it's like he turns around and goes, we're building trust here.
Yeah.
You need to think about what you're saying. And breaking that fourth wall was cool for me in the gameplay too.
That you're actually involved as
and like certain characters can hear you too. It's a fourth wall break, but not. It's kind of cool. I like the way that they did that for gameplay wise. Depth. It's a 5 for me. This game is extremely depth. Like I said, 1,000 different cards that it comes into a lot of different combos, different characters, different styles of play, having to think, the options available. I think that the depth is really, really good for this game.
And I have a depth of this 5 as well. And my big reason for that is the number-based combat system. Because without that, it's still a good game.
Yeah.
It's still fun to do, but it becomes a card collection game where the best cards will shine. And with this, yes, you can get the best cards, but when you incorporate that with bosses having resistance to different elements, you can't always use the best cards or the best characters because their decks are much too much aligned to an element they're not good against. So you do have to constantly customize. And then as long as you're able to look for these number sequences, number combos, pairs, you're always engaged in the combat. The combats never really truly feel generic and boring. Like there's times where you feel like, oh, I just want to get on to the next part, there's so many enemies I have to go through. But because you need to be on the ball when you're doing battles, especially as you get later on into the game, you can't just take that battle off like you can in JRPGs and just mash the A button over and over again until something dies.
You always have to be paying attention.
You always got to be paying attention. And even when you think it's a bit of a drag, all it takes is for you to hit that max 7 combo that you might be at, or your max 5 combo that you might be at with a huge finale, and you're going, oh sweet, look at that number, man, like that's huge.
Yeah.
Like as I go through these games, I always kind of laugh. Like at the beginning, it's like, oh, there's my first 50 damage combo, I'm on my way. And then suddenly it's like, oh, broke 100 for the first time, I'm awesome. And then it's you break 1 or 200, and you're like, oh, here we go. And then you break 500 for the first time, you're like, give me some more.
Yeah, I think the first time I leveled up, 50 damage was like the easy, like if I had no combo, I just played card as 50. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then I do like 140 out of nowhere with a good combo. I'm like, bosses.
Yeah.
Bring on a boss.
Yeah.
I'm ready for it.
And then the next time you do a battle sequence and you're like 12 damage, you're like, oh, man.
But so gameplay depth, pretty good.
Yep.
Looking at our post-play category, playability out of 10 and cost satisfaction. Replayability, I put exactly at the gameplay for me is 8. For me, I'm still playing the game and I'm still wanting to play the game, so I still want to go back to it.
That's a good thing.
So that's why I have it at exactly the same. Now, the actual end game, when I finish it, how much do I want to play it again after that? I'll look at it, but this game's a longer game, I'm pretty sure, at the end of the day.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, my first time I played through, I probably did it in 60 hours, but that's also a kid who was...
A 60-hour game, though, from a 2004 JRPG is still pretty good. It's on par.
It's definitely not that especially when we're playing it now.
Yeah.
Like, I've put in, 12 hours. I am, probably an hour away from Disc 2.
Yeah.
And Disc 2 is slightly longer, so you might still get that 25 to 30 hour range out of it. But that's also me playing it so many times, knowing how to get the items to optimize the deck versus the right bosses, so that I'm not ever losing these battles.
And having to rethink.
Yeah. It's like, for example, you're at the point where you're about to face the Crystal Spider, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And you can farm the... I don't even remember, boomers. But if you play Final Fantasy, you call them bombs. I call them bombs too. But you can farm them, and as you kill them, you sometimes get the flame tongue sword that gets dropped.
Yeah.
So if you get a whole bunch of those, and as well as the fire armors they drop, and you put them in your deck, and then you go face them, holy crap, you two-turn them. Like, it's... Like, I know those optimizations, and I mean, having the guidebook helps, because I've played through enough gameplay of watching what's coming up and what creatures drop what.
Yeah.
That I know... that, I can kill these guys for 10 minutes before I even go into the hardest parts of the game, and those items will carry me until the next map, because I know the weaknesses and effectiveness.
Yeah. No, it's been, so like I said, 8, because I'm still interested. I'm still going to go back and play this game, so it's right where it should be.
I gave it a 9 for this, just because it is a JRPG. It is at a point in my life where sitting down and saying, alright, this game is going to take 30 hours of fairly involved gameplay to get through.
Well, you said you replay this game every year or two.
Every couple of years, I try to get into it.
But you said you rarely.
I rarely make it to the end because something in life interferes. I put it down, and it's one of those games where, when I pick it back up, I'm never fully sure what I was doing, because I feel like every time I play the game, I'm trying to do things in a different direction. Whether or not it's normally I play with these 3 characters. I want to try and incorporate these 2 into my main team this time. So I'm trying to get items to build towards that. And when I come back after leaving it for a year and I look at that save file, I just go, restart. I might as well just restart and see what happens. Like, it's...
Yeah.
But my big thing for 9 is not just the hours played you have to put into it to get straight to the end where it's really fun, but there is always going to be an element of regretting some battles that you can't avoid. That's just an RPG, a JRPG for you. It's tons of battling. Sometimes it gets repetitive, and it's going to happen.
Yeah.
And that to me just knocks it down a little bit,
But the RNG element of the battles is interesting. Like you said, it's not just like a JRPG where I'm mashing A on my attack because I know I'm going to kill these weaklings. It's like, no, I need to pay attention to every single battle because every single hand is going to be
Which
different.
is why I don't have it lower than a 9, because it's still engaging, but there are still times where you're like, you see the door, you're running for the boss to finish the zone, and something pops up and hits you, and you're like, this is going to be like thought process for another 2 minutes. It's just like, I just wanted to move on with the story. Like, I've got the items to get to the blue flowers so I can upgrade my classes to get more cards. And sometimes it's a bit frustrating, but I'm still giving it a 9.
It's typical RPG
typical RPG elements.
Looking at cost satisfaction, 5.
Yeah, it's free for you right now.
Free emulator.
But even think back to it in the GameCube days, this was a $40 game when it came out.
It's like this game, if there's enough time that you can, like, there's enough gameplay in here that I think it's worth its value of when it came out. So looking at it as if it was to cost the same amount, it still would have been a very good purchase.
So to me, buying it used now costs $60, give or take.
Yeah.
And that's still high value for me. I would still do it. If I could find a good copy that wasn't too damaged, I would buy it and keep it forever.
Yeah. You still have, like you said, the walkthrough booklet here.
Yeah,
so.
I still got the walkthrough booklet. Like, that to me is just, there you go, nice on the screen there. It is well loved. This thing has been with me for a long time, and honestly, when you get to some points in the game, you're going to be sending me messages saying, hey, what's going on here?
Here, just grab
there you go, a couple pages of characters. Like, there's Callus and Shella, the first 2 main characters you see in the game, and as you go through...
There's your mask dude.
Yeah, there's the masked dude I was talking about.
Yeah, so, fair amount. And there's, 6, 7 characters? 8 characters?
6 characters, playable characters in the game.
So, interesting parts. But like I said, cost satisfaction, especially for me, because it's an emulator, very easy to come by.
Yep.
5, it's a free game, basically.
Yep, and I'm a 5. This game could have been $80 on the Switch right now, and it would still be a 5 for cost satisfaction. If they would remaster this game, they could charge me $160. I would still buy it.
So I think I was reading about it, and the designers had said that they, after doing the Origins, because this game had really good critical acclaim, but very poor sales.
Poor sales, fan base was solid fan base, but not enough people were willing to give it a chance because it was a bit foreign.
Enough that it came out with the Origins, a second game, a little bit later on the GameCube version, but since then nothing, because I believe that team works on the Xenoblade Chronicles.
Yes. Or the director.
Yeah, that became their main focus. But I read that the team...
They want to do it. They had one in works.
Okay.
For a while, there was a Baten Kaitos DS that was supposed to come out. Got axed. Baten Kaitos 3 got axed. Since then, I mean, it's been such...
They basically said that if they ever got the opportunity, the team that worked on this game
they would love to do it
in a heartbeat. So.
But they're not... I don't think they're going to.
I'd like to see something come out of this whole card combat system again. I think it could still work in today's age.
Well, that's why I continue to try and incorporate into my designs, because I know this is dead. This is an IP that will probably never come back. Mm-hmm. Because if someone wants it, Namco's going to charge them up the butt to...
I'm sure you've looked.
No, I wouldn't even talk to them about this.
But I like the concept of combat, and I would like to see it again come out. Anyway, so jumping final scores for this game, I rated it total 42 out of 50 there.
And I gave it 49.
Just because you couldn't quite... had to give it that one drop down on the...
Because it's hard to say a game is ever perfect.
Yeah.
And this one definitely has its drawbacks, and if we talked about different categories rather than our standard gameplay categories or just in categories in general, there would have been more knocks on it and it would have lost points. But we don't talk about things like voiceover acting and world iteration and game maps. Like, we're strictly trying to talk about our impression as a card-based battle game.
Yeah. And I like that. So, our... Cash or trash, Brendan?
This game is cash. This is always cash.
If you guys have that access to an emulator, you need to go play it right now if you're looking for a game to grind some hours through and have fun.
Yep, there's absolutely nothing wrong with getting through this game. This is enjoyable. This is going to open your eyes a little bit in the design world for the flexibility and the creativeness that you can do with something as simple as a card with numbers.
And it's unique. It is very unique in that system, and it's a skill-based RPG. It's not just, grind to high levels and press A.
Yeah.
which is different from Final Fantasy. Even though, mind you, like a lot of the newer Final Fantasies take into that aspect of trying to keep you active.
They're developing, but now.
But this game did it in 2000.
Yeah, that's the thing. Now we're in 2021, and
yeah. So it makes a big difference. So, final thoughts on this beat?
Get it, play it. If you don't love it,
yeah,
that's okay because it's not for everyone. But if you like card games, you're gonna like Baten Kaitos.
Yep.
Till next time.
Bye.
See ya. Thank you for tuning in to the DWMC podcast, a Paragon Professional Services production. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you have any comments or concerns about what you have heard, send us an email, contact@paragonstudiosmb.com. If you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you consume your podcasts, and leave a comment with a 5-star review if you feel so inclined. For those of you watching on YouTube, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and leave a comment below.